Okay, so in this video, first of all, this is the second video. So if you haven't watched the first one, make sure that you go back and do that now. We are going to, in the last video, we did factored form. So now we're going to solve using distributive factoring. Okay. So first thing that you are going to do is set the equation equal to 0. And make sure to keep the x squared positive. So you want to move whichever one isn't the x squared. So for instance, this equation is 4x equals 12x squared. So you want to move the 4x because the x squared is over here. So I'm going to do that by subtracting 4x on both sides. So 4x minus 4x is 0 equals, now these aren't like terms, so I would just do 12x squared minus 4x. So then you are going to find the GCF, the greatest common factor, and the leftovers of each term, and write it in factored form. So that's what we did in the last video. So first of all, we need to find the GCF and the leftovers of each term. So if we're looking at this, we have these two terms. We have 12x squared and 4x. So if we were going to factor this, so let's just start with the 12, for instance. 12 is 4 times 3, and 4 is 2 times 2. So I've got this 3, the 2, and the other 2. So my factored form would be 3 times 2 times 2 times x times x. And then 4 is just 2 times 2. And then times your x. So the GCF is the greatest common factor. So what these have in common. So I would circle what they have in common. So they've got one set of 2's that are in common, and then another set of 2's that are in common, and then an x that is in common. So that makes my GCF. So we would multiply those back together. So 2 times 2 is 4, and then times your x. And you're only multiplying one of your rows, not both of them. So if you did 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, that'd be 16, and these don't have a 16 in common. So it's just one of your rows. So then your leftovers, so here I've got a 3 and an x left over. And in the second one, I don't have anything left over, which means that that would be a 1. So when we write this, our GCF comes out. So you would do your GCF, and then in parentheses would be your leftovers. So our GCF is the 4x. And then our leftovers is the 3x. And then this is minus 1. Now I got the minus from up here because it was originally a minus. Now if that was originally a plus, then it would be a plus sign. So make sure that you're paying attention to your values or your signs. Okay, so then you are going to set each part equal to 0 and solve. So you're going to set your 4x equal to 0 and then your 3x minus 1 equal to 0. And then you're going to solve both of those. So I would divide this one by 4. Now 0 divided by anything is just going to be 0. So then I would add 1. And then divide by 3. Excuse me. So then those are your two answers. Okay, so let's try another. Okay, so go ahead and try to do this one on your own, and let's do this one together. So step 1 is to make sure that it's set equal to 0. So in this one up here, it's actually already set equal to 0, so step 1 is already done for you. And you don't want to move your x squared, so this 3x squared is going to stay. So I'm going to subtract 5x from both sides to get 3x squared minus 5x equals 0. So 3x squared and the 5x, we'll factor those. So 3 is prime, so it's just going to be 3 times x times x. And 5 is also prime, so that's just 5 times x. So the only thing that they have in common is an x. So that makes our GCF x. And then our leftovers, so we have 3x and then 5. So x and 3x, and then it's minus because this was a minus. And you can always check to see if you've done this right by multiplying that back in there. So if I were to multiply this back into the parentheses, so x times 3x would be 3x squared, and then x times your negative 5 would be negative 5x. So see how that's what I have over here, meaning that I factored this correctly. So if you don't get what you originally had, then you've done something wrong. So you can always check your work if you want. You do not have to do that, but if you're wondering if you did this step correctly, you can always do that. Okay, so I'm going to set each part equal to 0, the x, and then what's inside the parentheses, so the x minus 5. Well, this one's nice because it's already done for us. So then I would add 5 to both sides. So 3x equals 5. Then divide by 3. So x equals 5/3. So for all of these, you should have 2 answers. Unless you don't have a GCF, then you're not going to have 2 answers. All of my answers are written in fraction form like this. So if you are checking your work on my answer key, all of mine are going to be in fraction form, but you can write this as a decimal. just know that my answers aren't going to be like that when you're checking them. So if you think that you got it wrong, just make sure that this isn't that as a decimal. Okay, so like I said, do this one on your own, and then now you can do the 7.3.1 worksheet, and let me know if you've got any questions. Have a good day.